Welcome back to NWMO Roadway Safety Live. And if you're new to the podcast, we are so happy you are joining us. This podcast is brought to you by the Northwest Missouri Roadway Safety Program and the Northwest Missouri Regional Council of Governments. As always, I am your host, Peyton Bell. In every episode of this podcast, we will share insights, stories that we hope to empower you to make safer choices behind the wheel. Today's episode is called The Cost of Skipping the Click, and we will discuss seatbelt safety, current statistics, and later on have a special guest to share her story. So let's get into today's podcast episode. As you can see, I'm back with my coworker Christy to talk about seatbelt basics.
Thanks, Peyton. So, yes, there's some things that people don't usually think about when they sit down in the car and buckle up their seatbelt. They just think, okay, I'm buckled, I'm good, right? That's it, end of story. But it's not always that simple. And there's a lot of research and crash testing data that goes into why your seatbelt functions the way it functions and what it does to protect you. So, we have a few tips and things that you should think about as you buckle in, just because these are part of how your seatbelt functions properly. So we want it to work for you. So there are 3 stages of a crash. There is the vehicle crash, there's the human crash, and then there's the internal crash. And that kind of sounds maybe weird. But basically the vehicle is what you would think, the car itself. The human, well, yes, that's us. And that's where the restraints come in. Mm-hmm. And then your internal organs do things no matter what's happening in that crash. Yeah. And one of the things that you can do to properly wear your seatbelt to help you what's called ride down a crash. And the riding down comes from the seatbelt being placed properly or the harnessing whatever mechanisms you have on yourself. Like, because, with a roller coaster, you wear different types of harnessing. It's all to help you ride down the action of the momentum. But those crash points are in your shoulders and your pelvis. So when you sit down in your car and you buckle up, make sure that your seat isn't too reclined. It's not going to harness you at the right crash points. And don't slouch. So when you buckle, make sure everything locks into place, because what happens is you have a retractor in your seatbelt and it puts tension on as where you have placed that seatbelt. So if you're like this and I buckle, it's going to lessen the impact when I sit up or change the impact of the protection that I'm offered.
And to kind of go along with that, you need to make sure that your shoulder belt is going straight across your chest. It's not going under the arm or behind your back, because like Christy said, the shoulders hold a lot of the impact, so you want to make sure it's on going across your chest and your shoulders so that it rides down when you crash.
The lap belt is another piece of the seat belt, especially for your front seats. In the back, you might have just the lap belt at minimum. But that's another one now. If you have ovaries inside of there, you have to make sure that it does cross across your pelvis, because you don't want it over your tummy, because that in an impact you can crush what's under there, and so you want to protect those organs.
Yeah, they say that your pelvic bones are way stronger than your stomach, obviously, because there's no bones there, but except for your rib cages. But I don't think someone would have it that high.
No.
But so the pelvic bones are strong enough to withhold the force when you suddenly stop or crash a vehicle. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing is that you want to make sure that your belt is not twisted. Any twist in your seatbelt can increase the risk of an injury when you suddenly stop or crash your vehicle.
And that all goes back to the retractor. There's different types of retractors in each vehicle, but they all have that same locking mechanism, so that if there's a twist in it, it throws off the locking mechanism, and you want that to function properly for you.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring in a little science lesson for today's podcast episode. I'm pretty sure that most people learned in either middle school or high school about Newton's first law of motion. So this first law of motion is also referred to the law of inertia. And the law states that an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion continues in motion at a constant velocity or speed unless acted upon by an external force. So this plays a lot into wearing a seatbelt, because when you wear your seatbelt in a vehicle and your vehicle suddenly comes to a stop, you and your passengers move forward due to inertia, which is the object staying in motion until acted upon. And so if you were to not wear your seatbelt, so basically the seatbelt counteracts the motion. So it prevents you to moving forward any farther than what the seatbelt allows you. So that's the external force stopping you, because your car has stopped, but your body hasn't stopped because it was moving. So the seatbelt counteracts that force and keeps you in place and you don't go anywhere. Now, on the flip side, if you weren't wearing your seatbelt while you crash or suddenly stop, you have nothing to protect you from stopping. So your body continues moving until you're in the dashboard, out the window, or outside of the car eventually, depending on the crash. And so that's kind of how inertia is involved with wearing a seatbelt, because it counteracts the force and prevents you from moving farther outside of the car.
Yeah, so you are familiar with this video because you put it in our presentation.
Yeah.
But I was doing the winter safety and the seatbelt presentation today, and there is a video where two moms talk about the loss of their children, and the reason was simply because they were not wearing their seatbelts, and they described exactly everything you were just saying that Peyton was describing about these two that were in the back seat that were not the child of this mother who lost, one of the mothers who lost a son. They were buckled and they were fine.
Yeah.
Not a scratch on them. But the two that were in the front, they continued outside of the vehicle and they were ejected from the car. And so it makes all the difference in wearing your seatbelt.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about how to wear your seatbelt properly and keep you as safe as possible in the vehicle, we're going to move on to what the current statistics look like in the state of Missouri for the overall population, and then for teens, and then our 5-county region. So from the Save More Lives website, we have been able to pull data from there for just the state of Missouri, and from 2023 to 2025. So in 2023, the seatbelt usage percentage was 88%. In 2024, it was 88.9%, and then we see a decrease in 2025 to 87%. So, Christy, do you have any thoughts on these statistics?
I actually, even though we shared the script beforehand, I was just looking at these statistics, just thinking that this is the amount of people buckled.
Percentage of people buckled.
That's not enough. 88% is not enough.
No, it's not.
And so, and then you look at that in correspondence to the fatality rate, and then you see there is a positive correlation there.
Yeah.
And that's, if we could just get people to commit to buckling and buckling properly, the effect that it could have, because I don't want to steal your thunder, but the one down here for 64% of fatalities in our 5-county region for the last, previous 2020 to 2024, 4-year period is what I'm trying to say, but my tongue won't let me. 64% of fatalities
were unbuckled, yeah, which is crazy because that's over half of the crashes in our 5 counties weren't wearing seatbelts.
And imagine if they had. And
Yeah.
all it takes is,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
You're done.
And that's one thing we tell our students when we give presentations is like, it's an easy thing to do. It's not that hard.
Mm-mm.
It's quick and easy. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of the point of, I say life and death. Like, your decision on wearing that, if you were to get in a crash, can be life or death.
Mm-hmm.
Because that seatbelt is going to prevent you from moving anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You might move it forward a little bit, but like it's going to prevent you from going out through that dashboard,
Mm-hmm.
through the window or windshield, or outside of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's one thing that we tell the students is it's not that hard. It's super easy. Just do it, because it's going to save your life in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, another thing that I think about is what I tell the students too, and my own kids, is how many of these crashes do you think that someone got up that morning and said, I'm having a crash today?
No one.
No one. 100% of these people did not plan for that to happen in their day. And some of them, it ended up being a really bad day.
Yeah.
A tragic day, which leads you to your guest.
Yes. And another thing that a fact that we give the students is that a crash happens within 25 miles of your home.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter if you're close to home, there's still a chance that you could get into a crash. And so that's why we're like, no matter where you go, if it's close or it's far, put the seatbelt on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely. Yep. And you know, the point that I was talking about on that very statistic, I said, guys, I mean, think about it. What are you doing most of the days that you're driving around? You are within that 25 radius of home. You're going to school. You're going to work. You're going to and fro and to and fro. And if you don't buckle up, that's the time that you're on the road the most, is doing these day-to-day things. And you're not planning. And these roller coaster rural highways are like crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
they're very windy roads.
you definitely need to prepare. And that's one little way that you can prepare. And it takes little to no effort.
Yeah, I agree. And so we've been talking about teens, and from Save Mo Lives website again, the teen statistics for the state of Missouri from 2018, my bad, was 73.8%. We went up in 2020 to 75.5%, and then back down to 71.8%, which is kind of close to what we have. I think when I did the math from our seatbelt statistics, we saw a 64% buckle rate, which is so low. That means a little over half of the students in our 5-county region with the schools that we tested, a little over half buckle, which is crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's why we go and we tell them, we say, buckle up, phone down. Because we want them to stay safe, because we care. And that's what I told them today. I said, I've never met you before, but I care. And that's why I'm standing here today, just to tell you these little things that I said, they may seem silly at the moment, you know, or you think, oh, I already know that. Well, if you know it, then do it.
Yeah. And you saying that made me think of a story that we share with the high schoolers. And I find it really ironic because I remember in high school how much my mom used to nag me about random things.
True.
And she'll find this funny when she listens to this. But we had a story called Nagging Mother. And it was about a man who was driving home he had just gotten back from tour, drove home to Bellevue, Nebraska, and it was a winter storm, rolled his truck, they think, like 3 or 4 times. And if it wasn't for his mom nagging him constantly about wearing his seatbelt, he may have never made it home for Christmas. And so I think it's, when we're in high school, yes, we think our moms nag us so much, but they have a meaning and purpose behind it, and that's to keep us safe.
I'm team nag, definitely. Not just for my kids, but all the kids. All you kids listening, all adults, all of you. I'm team nag. Nag you for your seatbelt. Put it on.
Yes. Well, that's all me and Chrissy have to talk about for today. And in a little bit, we will bring on our special guest. So, see you in a minute. Hi, everyone. We're back for the second segment of our podcast, and I'm happy to be joined with Carey Portell. So, Corey, before we start talking about your crash, would you like to tell us a little about yourself and what life was like before your crash?
Yeah, sure. So before my crash, I was thinking about this on the way up here. I was so busy, like too busy, that I remember there were certain times that I would actually nod off at the stoplight, if I was sitting there. So I remember at that point going, man, you have got to figure out a way to slow down because I had my own photography business and when you're self-employed, it's not 40 hours like people think it is. I worked 60 to 80 hours a week. And then we had 4 young kids at home that, all the sports, all the activities
Yeah.
and things like that. So it was, work and kids and work and kids. And then we had the farm. So it was nonstop busy. And then life came to a screaming halt. And when I say halt, I mean nothing happened for me. For the next 4 years after my car crash, all I did was have one reconstructive surgery after another. So, sometimes I joke that I kept asking God, can you please figure out how for me to slow down? And he was telling me things and I didn't listen. And then he's like, okay, here, girl, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it for you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I feel like that's what a lot of parents in today's society are like is they're always on the constant go with their personal lives, their children's lives and work on top of that. And that's something that we've noticed with parents like in our region when we talk to them is they find themselves being super tired all the time but still get behind that wheel.
Yes.
So Carrie, what can you tell me about the day the crash happened?
Yeah, so the day the crash had happened, I had actually transferred back into the medical field that I was in prior to opening a photography studio. And a couple crazy things happened that day. So on our lunch hour, we just sat in the break room and we were watching, I don't know, some kind of documentary show. And it was about having premonitions of something that was going to happen. And there was something about like a car crash. And I thought to myself, oddly, what would it be like to actually know or feel that something was going to happen in the future? And then 5 hours later, here I am sitting in the middle of this mess that, I had kind of thought about throughout the day. But it was on Christmas vacation. It was December 29th. And for some reason that year, my husband said, I'm going to take off this week. There's not a whole lot that goes on at work, and I'm just going to spend it with the kids. And I thought, you're crazy. Because, having 4 kids that are back to back in age, I thought he has no idea what he's in for. And our car crash was on a Wednesday. And I remember him texting me saying, my God, these kids are driving me crazy. What time do you think you'll be home? And I remember snickering at that. And I said, you know what? Because on Wednesdays I went to taught an exercise class like almost directly from work. So I said, I'll come home and I'll take the 2 middle girls in case any of the ladies need babysitters, which only left me 10 minutes to go home, change, pick them up, and leave again to go to the studio. And it was odd because those choices that I made put me on a different path to the studio than I normally take. So normally I just go from where I worked in the medical field and I take the interstate I-44 to the next town, Cuba, where I live now, and go to the gym that way. But instead, we kind of lived where you could take a dummy overpass onto the South Outer Road, and it's a direct inline to the gym. And I was like, well, obviously, I'll just take that way instead of going all the way around and getting on the interstate again. And that choice put me in the path of an impaired driver. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it late at night or was it like during the day?
No, it was actually around, like the car crash, they say happened around 6:20 in the evening. Yeah. And it was so frigidly cold that day. I think it was 0 degrees. And it was just one of those where you wish you didn't have to get back out once you got home. But you do. And it was, it was a pretty crazy to kind of go over the details of that night.
Yeah. So after your car crash, what did your recovery look like in those next days, weeks, and months? And I know it even took years for you.
Yeah, it was a complete upheaval of our family life. So I spent the first 10 days in the hospital, and insurance sent me home. And the doctor was like, it's going to be horrible for her at home, because I was on a constant Dilaudid drip in the hospital, which was keeping my pain. I don't want to say minimal because I still remember being in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But he sent me home on Percocet and OxyContin. That's how bad my pain was.
Oh, wow.
And my husband told me later, he said, the doctor told me that, your wife is still going to be in a lot of pain, but we're just going to hope that she doesn't remember it. And it was laying in a hospital bed in the middle of my living room for months, because the only way that I could sit was to have, I guess, that curvature, where my legs were up, because a hospital bed will move.
Yeah.
And then it was almost like sitting in a recliner, but
Your feet
yeah,
raised.
but it was up under my knees. And that's the only way that I could get any kind of comfort at all.
Oh,
and it
wow.
was just, the family moved around me in the living room. It was not great for any of us, but it's what we had to do.
Yeah. And I know we talked earlier. Do you kind of want to talk about like what physical therapy was like for you? Because I know that kind of works into what life looks for you today.
Yeah, I feel like I can teach physical therapy at this point. I had years of it. But that initial physical therapy was horrible, because I had not moved. I had not moved at all in 5 months.
Oh, wow.
And, when you see your physical therapist, for a long time, and, 3 times a week, you get close and you talk and everything. And later on, my physical therapist said, when they wheeled you in that room, I thought, what in the heck am I supposed to do with her? That's how bad I was. But you had to start getting those joints moving,
Yeah.
because I was completely seized up. I was actually seized in the shape of basically my bed and my chair. And he wanted to start moving things. And I remember the first thing he did was, can you flip on your stomach? And I thought, what? I haven't been on my stomach in over 5 months, and I don't even know if I can. Because he had to do, some kind of measurements on me. And it was terrible. And as soon as I could get up, I just rolled back over. But it was really, I guess, I don't want to say enlightening. I think I was dumbfounded that he had me sit on this exercise ball that actually had fingers on the bottom. And he's like, let's see if you can balance on that. And in my mind, I said, that is crazy. Anybody could balance on this. And I got on it, and I could not keep my balance. I had lost all of my muscle. My entire body had atrophied to the point that, my legs were so small. It almost looked like I was malnutritioned, but I had just lost all of that muscle. And it really kind of hit me how bad I was, I think, at that point, and how long this recovery was actually going to take. Like, we didn't know it was going to be 4 years.
Yeah.
Like maybe a year. No, we had no idea. And even my surgeon was like, I've never had someone like you, Carey. He said, I've had someone with one of your injuries, but not all 3 of these major injuries, that's causing you to be partially disabled.
Yeah. What was the moment that you kind of realized, okay, I am going to get through this recovery?
It was a year.
Really?
It was almost a year to the anniversary of our car crash. And my surgeon did tell me, he said, Carey, you're going to feel like you're going through a death. You're going to grieve just like someone had died. And that's exactly how I felt. So I was grieving the death of my old life, knowing that it was never going to return to the way that it was. But just the amount of pain that I was in, and everybody thinks about the physical pain because that's what they can see, is all of my injuries and how difficult it is to even exist at that point. But the emotional pain was, just as difficult as the physical that I was feeling, because I had all this turmoil going on inside of me and these questions of, am I going to ever be okay again?
Yeah.
And that question was kind of twofold. It was physically, am I ever going to walk again? But my God, is my chest and my heart ever going to feel at peace again and just not in this constant upheaval.
Yeah. Can you share kind of like what things helped you get to be the point of I am like your chest and like heart kind of felt better about things? Yeah.
It was, so I'm a big quote person, and I had to be a really big self-motivator. So I had my husband print out these quotes and just tape them up all over my house. And there were days that I would recite it, I mean, for hours. I didn't even know hours had passed, but I had to like say that to myself over and over and over again so that I could just get through that moment, because it was so terrible. Like that first year, no one can actually fathom the way that you feel unless you go through it, because I cannot express and have somebody comprehend what it actually felt like. But somewhere, just having so many conversations with my husband, because he was my best coach ever, and he just took that position, in stride. And we would just talk about it, because I had to get all of this that was out of me, all that was in me out of me somehow. And, I had thought about going to therapy, but at that point I couldn't remember from one second to the next, because I was always on pain medicine, or I was always recovering from a surgery. I couldn't remember things. So at one point I did finally go to therapy once I kind of got my wits back, but it was a lot of him coaching me.
Yeah. And I bet that was super helpful.
Yeah. And I am so blessed to have a husband that said, man, this situation sucks so bad.
Yeah.
But this is what we have to do to get through it. And he just did it.
That's great.
And stuck around.
Yeah. So how did the crash kind of change the way you look at things afterwards?
Well, it definitely made me slow my mind down and consciously appreciate the things around me. So before, it's like I did appreciate it, but I didn't get to sit in that moment and like revel in it and really say, gosh, my life is good.
Yeah.
Gosh, I appreciate, even though our life is so busy, I love being able to watch these kids do their things and be a part of it. And after that, it was, I must make sure that I revel in these moments, because half my family was almost wiped from the face of this earth. And we are still here to be able to experience each other and appreciate each other. And there was many moments, like we were talking, like I'm a cattle farmer.
Yeah.
Once I was able to at least get in the truck and like go check calves and stuff, I would have these moments of just unbelievable gratitude wash over me. And I could feel it wash over me. And the first thing that I remember, like that first instance, was I was still in my wheelchair, and my dad had built me a wheelchair ramp on the front of our house. And just being able to wheel out, like once it turned spring and got a little bit warm, just to go outside and feel the sunshine and the warmth on my face. I remember I sat there and I completely had a breakdown, like just broke down on the front of my porch. And I remember saying, I am so grateful that I can actually feel the warmth of the sun on my face.
Yeah.
And I have never been in that fundamental of a place in my entire life. So everything inside of me shifted to just this place of gratitude.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. How does life look today after the crash and recovery for you?
It's I pretty much live in the moment, which is not something that I did before, because I never know what the next day is going to look like for me. So there are days that I feel like a rock star. Like I am so, I say close to my old self, even though I'm not even close at all, but I feel as close as I've ever been. And then the next day I might wake up and I might not be able to get myself off the couch, because I will have some kind of flare up. So I have arthritis, I have a ton of nerve damage, and then my body just creates a lot of inflammation and it will get me down. And I have gotten control of that a little bit. So before, my flare-ups would last somewhere between 11 and 14 days.
Oh, wow.
So half of my month would be gone. And now I've gotten it to the point where, maybe 1 to 4 days. There has been, like when the weather changes really bad, there are times where it is almost up to a week. And that is really, really hard on me, because my mind has not slowed down. I am still so ambitious in my mind, but my body will not keep up with what my mind wants to do.
Yeah. I think you can really see how ambitious you are to get back to somewhat of your old self, because the fact that you do a cattle, like you help at a cattle operation, I think is like super cool. And like with 4 years of recovery, you don't usually see people doing that stuff, and I think that's just amazing how far you've gotten.
Definitely not. And I was blessed with 2 amazing orthopedic surgeons that said, Carey, we don't know what you're going to be able to do because we've never had somebody with these injuries. But do what you think you can. If you figure out that, hey, this is just not going to work, you need to scratch that off your list. But trial and error is going to be your best friend. And they did talk to me a lot about don't get so down when you can't do things. You're going to have to navigate this and figure out what you can and can't do. And you're going to have a lot of acceptance phases.
Yeah.
And boy, did I have a lot of acceptance phases. I mean, it was like every time I turned around, I thought, gosh, here's one more thing I have to accept, because I could not figure out a way to manage, to do, and it's always a physical thing because I was so physical before this car crash. And there's a lot of things that I have been able to accomplish by trying to think more creatively. And I use our equipment at home for a lot of it. So of course I don't have the strength. Because of my injuries on my pelvis and both of my lower legs, I can't lift heavy things anymore. So I have to use equipment if I want to do that. So, and I'm not the type of person who's going to say, well, I'm going to have to wait for my husband to get home. I got all this time during the day. Why don't I try to figure this out? And plus he had been bombarded, by taking care of everything anyway. So, but that's just my natural personality, is what can I do to figure out how to do this on my own? And I needed that success. I needed that accomplishment to keep me going.
Yeah. So obviously our episode is about wearing your seatbelt. Where do you think you would be if you did not wear that seatbelt that day?
Dead. Period. I know the 3 of us would not be here anymore, because we were hit twice. We had 2 points of impact. So we had a head on, and then he also came into the side of my door. And when you look at how mangled our car is, there is absolutely no way that we would have still been in those seats had we not had our seatbelts on. I mean, we would have been either out of the car or all over on the inside of our car. And everybody had their seatbelt on except for that impaired driver, and he is the one who perished during the car crash.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, was the impaired driver driving a semi, or was it just a car?
No, he was in a 1-ton, I think, GMC truck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was crazy because I had a lot of people, they always say, what if? So my husband had to travel an hour to work. So he drove a car. Like, we had purchased a car specifically for him to drive back and forth. And I drove our dually because shorter distance means we didn't have, fuel was not cheap at that point. And now I think we're actually at the same price as it was back then. And we were going crazy with how expensive it was. But I always drove the dually to work. So since I came home, I was like, I'll just switch and take the car and, not use up so much gas money. And they're saying, but if you were in that truck, you would have been the same size. Maybe it wouldn't have, the impact wouldn't have been so bad for you. But what we didn't realize at the time until later on when we started looking at the car was that truck did not have the amount of airbags that car did. Yeah. So it was actually a blessing that we did take that car that night, because we had 3 airbags per seat, and the truck did not have 3 airbags per seat. So it was actually a good choice for me to do that.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, is there anything you would like to tell our listeners about smart choices they should make behind the wheel to keep everyone safe, or more seatbelt geared things that you would like to tell them?
Yeah, you have to be your own advocate for yourself. Yeah. So, I told you before all this happened that I was nodding off at the stoplight. That's how tired I was in life. It's not just impaired driving that is something that you have to think about. It is drowsy driving as well. And I know that at that point I felt like I had to do what I had to do, I'll do all the things, but you can't do that. So now when I'm drowsy, I pull over, and it's non-negotiable for me. And we have instilled that in our children as well. But getting getting behind the wheel in any case where you are not at your best,
Yeah.
you have to make a conscious choice and go, oh, it'll be fine. Don't say that, because there's a lot of times, eventually at some point when you do that over and over and over again, it is going to catch up with you. And I know that they say, there was a statistic out there that people who drive impaired, they do it like, I think 90 something times before they either actually get caught or they cause some kind of accident. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, how many people are out there doing that right now?
Yeah.
That is a lot of times before something happens, but it almost always will catch up with you. So
Yeah.
I don't care if you feel like you're putting somebody out, by asking them, hey, can you come pick me up? A lot of times these days, even the rural communities, somebody usually has some kind of taxi or Uber going on these days. Find someone to take you home.
Yeah. No, and that was something my parents told me when I was, or to this day, if you need a ride home because of some reason, we will be there no matter what time it is. Like, we'd rather you have a safe drive home than someone be impaired or tired or anything else and drive you home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our kids kind of became the parents of their friend groups.
Yeah.
Because I told them the same thing. I'm like, if there is somebody that, I need to come up, I said, do not hesitate to call me.
Yeah.
We do not want this to happen to anyone else on this road. You guys know how terrible it is to go through. And that's kind of how they became the moms and dads of their friends group. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So that's all for our podcast today. Carey, I am so thankful that you were able to come up here and talk with me in person. It's great to hear your story, and I think it'll really impact others in our area and all over Missouri. And I would also like to thank Christy for joining me earlier in today's podcast, where we talked about seatbelt, how to wear your seatbelt statistics. And of course, I would like to thank all of our listeners that are tuning in right now. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, please follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram to see what we're all up to. And then lastly, be sure to check or keep an eye out for next month's podcast, where we will have another special guest talk with us about impaired driving. Thank you, and see you next time.